the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim. That is my buddy Zach on the other side of this screen that we are on. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast, frequent listeners over the last couple of years, you've only heard us on the audio, whether it's been Podbean or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we encourage you to continue to listen that way. But we're trying to throw in some new components and stuff like that. We've taken a couple months off, gotten into the summer vacation, all that good stuff, and we wanted to add some new things, and one of the things we wanted to do was try to add this video component, the YouTube component. So we want to thank you if you go ahead and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. That's under Tim Anderson Podcast on YouTube, and you're going to get a chance to pick up some extra video content, and it's definitely going to make this particular podcast more fun, I think. So we've got Zach here, and Zach you've heard on the Football Pod, and he's going to be with us again for Season 3 of the Football Pod. But today we're going to open some cards and let the cards be the basis of our conversation today, as we'll probably talk a little sports, clearly a little baseball, as we dig into this pack of cards and go from there. Zach, obviously a big card fanatic, and I'm getting back into it. I got a lot of friends who are, so this should be a lot of fun. Zach, welcome to the video podcast, and let's get our YouTube audience up and running here, huh?
Yeah, I'm excited to try it out. I think, it's important to talk a little bit, like you said, that we're going to let the cards guide the conversation, but this is not a card podcast. We're not ripping packs looking for big autographs and high money cards. We're here, talk sports and maybe a little bit of nostalgia out of it as well.
And if we do happen to come across a sweet card, then great, right? All the better. But that's not the goal of this particular podcast. So I know my friends Bob and Mike, they're gonna be sad, but there it is.
Probably not any big hits in our packs today with the Fleer 92, but we'll see. We'll see.
Hey, there we go. So we're gonna open a pack or two of Fleer 92 baseball trading cards, and we're gonna look at the different players that are there and see what that inspires for a little story and get us rolling. Zach is hard in the softball coaching season, baseball season, definitely in full mode here. So this should be right up your alley today, Zach.
Yeah, so, I don't know if you remember these cards, Tim. They were the ones with the green borders.
Yep, I do. Yep, I remember these.
And so for me, I don't know why, but the Clemens card is always, my favorite.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we can find one of those, because I got a bunch of these for Christmas, and I've not hit a Clemens yet in it. So
maybe we're due. All right,
we're due. So if you see anyone here that you want to talk about, if you've got a great Charlie O'Brien story, feel free to
yes, I do.
as we go through here, a lot of catchers.
A lot of catchers early on. We got Chris Hoyles, Joel Skinner, your guy Kelly Downs. Oh, Brett Saberhagen.
That may be the best player
we've found so far here. Dale Murphy. What are you talking about? Dale Murphy right there.
All right, here you go. There you go. League leaders, Tom Glavine.
All right, well, Tom Glavine.
92, right? So this is right after the World Series, right, against the Twins.
Yep. So Glavine is young, but he's starting to come into his own right there. We'll talk a little Tom Glavine here as we go, and probably a little bit. But that's the best pull right there. Not bad.
Yep. So and he had a great year that year with them.
Oh, yeah.
Top prospect, Wayne Kirby. I don't think that one worked out.
That didn't work out. They're going to want to maybe rethink that one.
Mark Leiter.
Wishes he was Al Leiter. Frankie V. This could be the conversation piece right there, because I just read some stuff on this.
We're going to set him aside here for a second.
We'll definitely talk him.
So we can get to that. Paul Gibson.
Pass. Kevin Elster. Mike Boddicker. And your guy, Ruben Sierra.
He could swing it a little bit.
Oh, gosh. Love that leg kick from Ruben Sierra. All right, we got Glavine and Viola. Where do you want to go?
Well, let's start with Viola, because he is the Minnesota guy.
Okay.
Although in the Mets uniform here.
We are in the I think we just had, what is this now, the 32nd anniversary coming up of the big trade that we could say brought the Twins their second World Series title when they traded Viola, a disgruntled Frank Viola in 1989, and picked up a haul. A definite victory in the trade market there, as they picked up Tapani, they picked up David West, they picked up Aguilera, and it was the foundational pieces they needed to win their next World Series in 91.
Well, and the Aguilera piece, I think, ended up being the biggest part of it.
They thought West was going to be.
Right, and West was really a non-factor, right? He was kind of a middle relief left-hander. And yeah, but everybody did think he was going to be the big piece of it. I mean, obviously they got some useful starting pitching out of it too, but Aguilera was pretty good as a closer back then too. He was one of the top guys in the AL after Eckersley.
Yeah, he really became the quintessential closer for us for a lot of years, and was big because he had that split finger, and he was a veteran. Like, he was a veteran guy that we needed in the bullpen that we didn't have. That 89 Twins team, I think a lot of people, forget about this. That 89 team was really bad. Like, that 89 and 90 Twins team was not good. You could tell that some of the pieces were starting to wear out. Like, the Gaetti was starting to get disgruntled. Herbeck had more injuries here and there. They still had the core guys, but you could tell things were fraying around the edges, especially with the pitchers.
And they traded Aguilera too down the road. The Twins did. Again, remember they traded him and then he came back.
That's right. I remember that. They traded him for Frank Rodriguez.
In 95. To the Red Sox. And so he obviously, he liked it here. But yeah, Viola, he went on to the Mets and he was good, right? I mean, in 90, he threw like 250 innings and his ERA was under 3. Right? I mean, you can't knock Frankie Viola. And I don't know if you, where were you and how did you sit on when he asked for the trade? Were you upset?
I was 8 at the time, and I think I just remember going like, well, he's our best pitcher. Like, we can't trade our best pitcher. Because I was young and I didn't quite understand the dynamics of it, but I just remember him not pitching well that year, and it just felt like it the kind of the I'd hear my dad or I'd hear people around me who like sports talk about how it just didn't seem like he wanted to pitch here anymore, that he was kind of over it, and that he would not pitching with the same intensity, and you could tell that it just wasn't working for whatever reason. Like, he just didn't seem happy here, and he wasn't pitching well. He was struggling here, and I think they moved him at the deadline, and it was just like, but it was sad because it was that 87 team. I remember being young and they traded Brunansky for Tommy Herr, and I was like, man, why? Brunansky's amazing. Why would we trade the pieces that are already good? Like, we just won a World Series with all these great pieces. Why would we get rid of any of them? Keep them all. I didn't quite understand the dynamics and the finances of baseball back then, but this one was, I was like, man, we're going to suck. This is the worst trade ever. And I can't believe we traded Viola, even though he was struggling. But, then quickly, you find Kevin Tapani and you find, Aguilera, and you find even David West. For a while, they were throwing him in the starting rotation. In fact, I found a game on YouTube the other day where he's playing against the Angels, and Burt Blyleven's pitching for the Angels, and David West is throwing for the Twins, and West is throwing well for us. And you start to go like, that's what they were looking for with that guy that we didn't get.
Well, and they added, obviously, Jack Morris. Right, and so that's one of those times where if you add a number 1, it moves everybody back a slot.
Right. Yeah, Tapani made such sense as the number 2 or 3 guy on any rotation. Like, he was so solid and so good. But late 90s, they were asking him, or mid 90s, they were asking him to be like the ace, and he just wasn't that guy. And it allowed Erickson to be amazing in 91 and have his best season. And, Morris kind of took the Viola role that year, I think, safe to say. And Viola, you're right, it was kind of, he had a good 90. I think people thought, well, Viola just fell off a cliff, and it's like, well, not really. I mean, not exactly, but he obviously wasn't the same pitcher that he was in the mid-'80s when he was here, because he was off the charts here for a couple years. What's his comp? Is Frank Viola's comp like Johan Santana? Like, when you look back at their careers, or did Viola have a better career than Santana? Should we look at Viola differently than we do? Not just as a Twin, but as just a baseball comp.
Well, I think like you said, he had some up and down years, and his ERA was a little higher, but obviously he pitched in a time where it was more about eating innings than necessarily what it was, right? About right, like guys were going 7-8 innings, and if they had a 4 or 5 run lead, they'd let them go another inning to eat up an inning, and they didn't care if they gave up a run or two. And that type of ball just doesn't happen anymore. So, I mean, he's right. Let's see. He won one Cy Young, right? He won the Cy Young in '88 for the Twins.
Yeah, he was great that
year. He
He
won 24 games. He was only an All-Star, though, a couple times. I think he was only an All-Star once for the Twins.
Really?
If I recall
in '88,
correct.
he started in '88. Like,
Yeah,
he
I think
started
that's
the All-Star.
only one. And then he made it as a Met a couple times. But so I think he's one of those guys that we probably remember him more fondly, or we'll talk more about him than most people will. How's that for an answer?
I think that's fair, yeah. So we agree. Like, I mean, he's not a... What did he finish with? Did he finish with 200 wins? Did he get to 200 wins as a pitcher? I don't think so.
I'm pulling it up right now. He had 176.
176 wins. Yeah, that's an era where, I mean, that's not going to get you there. But like I said, a great career.
I don't think anyone's arguing for, Hall of Fame or anything like that. I mean, he was just a very solid pitcher who spiked a couple of really good years.
Yeah, not like Tom Glavine.
Right. And Glavine, I mean, so this is like the start of Glavine, right? 92.
Yes.
He was pretty young. And 91, I think he won 20 games, right? He was their best pitcher that year.
Yes.
In my opinion. Smoltz was pretty good too that year, wasn't he?
Yeah, Smoltz was really good. Yeah, this is pre-Maddox. They get Maddox in like 90. Right. Did they get him in 92? They get Maddox in 92, I think, or 93. But they were running with Smoltz, Avery, and Glavine. I think Avery and Smoltz had a lot of run, and it was Glavine who didn't seem like that at first, because I think he had to take some losses in the late 80s first as a rookie. And I don't know if they looked at him the same way.
Right, Glavine's like 91 or 90, excuse me. It's even on the back of the card here. It talks about some of his highlights, but it said he won 20 games in 91, but in 90 he had a 4.28 ERA, and he wasn't. It was still talked a lot about potential, and then in 91 he took off.
Those were some bad Braves teams in the late 80s, 90s. Those were some really bad teams, and Glavine had to go out there and just get lit up a couple hundred times, like a lot of young pitchers do. I think we kind of lose our patience with pitchers in modern day. Like, we could see that a lot with the Twins situation right now in the bullpen. People are just on Twitter. You are the same. You're in the camp right now too. Although you've seen enough of some of these guys, but I think we kind of forget that like these young pitchers need this developmental time. Like, they can't all come in here and just throw smoke on day one and just be amazing. Like, especially a guy like him, who was this sort of finesse pitcher. You got to kind of grow into that role, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what the Twins are missing right now is some veteran arms in the bullpen.
Yes.
They don't even have to be dominant guys, right? Like, they're missing the Sergio Romo.
Right.
A guy who's been around the block, has a little guile. Maybe he gives up a run or two here and there. I mean, and I don't even think he's been that good this year. I know he was hurt at the start of the year, and so this is not a bring back Sergio Romo conversation. It's just, I think sometimes you need guys who have done it before.
Right.
Right? Guys who've been around the block.
Well, that's supposed to be what Tyler Duffy is. That's what he's supposed to be, right? Like, he's supposed to be the veteran guy. But he might suck.
Yeah, Sergio Romo right now is 7.63 ERA in 15 innings.
Which means he's very available. He seems like a Twins guy.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, even with the Duffy, like, where, like, what, I don't know. Can you point, like, to something where it makes you go, like, oh, yeah, Duffy's pitched in some big games?
Yeah, it's true.
I don't have that out of him, so I don't know. All right, should we crack another one of these?
Let's crack another pack. That was great. Hey, there we go. We got a Frank Viola conversation going. That was sweet. Anytime we can talk Frank Viola, I'm on board. All right, let's see if we got something here. We're looking for that Clemens.
I do enjoy when Viola's on K-Fan here.
Yeah, Viola's great. Like. Randy Milligan.
Ooh, there we go. Ryan Sandberg. That's probably the...
Oh, there it is. You found the Roger Clemens career highlights card. Yep. Perfect.
This is not the base card that I was thinking of, but yeah, they have he has an insert set in this one. Well, even here on the pack, right? Collect Roger Clemens career highlights.
You just got it.
Limited editions. Yep, we got one of them.
Look at this. So we got Sandberg and Raj back to back in this pack.
So it is a 12 card insert pack. And of course on here it says they're one. Oh, excuse me. There's also the autograph versions of those. The autograph versions are 1 in 35,000 packs.
Oh my.
But that is not the autograph version. So let's keep looking here.
All right, Roberto Kelly. I saw that. Is that Wangan? Ooh, Wangan. Yep. And Blackjack McDowell. Okay.
Yep.
And is that
young
Luis Gonzalez. Very young. Scotty Leas. Felix Jose. Rico Rossi.
I don't know that I've ever heard of him.
I feel like he should be like a guy who runs a casino or something. Sounds like a casino's name.
So let's talk some Clemens here.
All right, let's talk because his son just debuted, right? His son debuted recently for the Tigers. Like he just went out and pitched the other day.
So Clemens is a guy who I always think of in like 3 distinct careers. And the problem is like I almost ignore I tend to ignore everything that happened in Toronto.
Yeah, and he was great. He was only there for 3 seasons, but he was 2, and then we could argue they were two of his very best. Like they were really good.
Young back.
Yeah, he was awesome up there.
But maybe I'm different, but I think of like his Boston run.
Yep.
And then his Yankees stuff. And then those kind of half seasons that he would do with Houston, or he kind of Brett Favre it where he wouldn't show up for training camp and come in a little late or whatever. I don't know. And he did go back to the Yankees in when he retired in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Again, for like a half season, but he was a shell of himself that year. But you look through, 2005, right? He's 42 years old. He's got an ERA of 1.87.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. He led the league in ERA. Now, granted, and he threw 211 innings.
Yeah, there's not a guy out there right now who's going to throw 211 innings this year, is there? Scherzer's been hurt, so he's not going to. But how many guys are going to throw 211 innings for a major league team this year?
Yeah, there's not many, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like with his 3, like I said, like 3 distinct, to me, portions of his career, like where do you identify, where is Clemens a Red Sox, a Yankee, an Astro to you? What do you see him as?
See, I guess this goes back to the Hall of Fame part of this, too. To me, he's always going to be Boston because I grew up with him pitching for Boston, and I felt like he was a Hall of Fame. If you take everything out, take Toronto, New York, Houston out, he's a Hall of Famer on just his Boston career, in my opinion. Like, and that's partly where the Hall of Fame debate kind of goes weird for me because everybody's like, he's a user, he's a PED guy, can't let him in. I'm like, all right. It's the same conversation I had with Bonds. Like, to me, Bonds is a Hall of Famer. If you take just his career and you end it in 1995, he's a Hall of Famer. Like, he's one of the best players to ever play the game. And I feel the same way about Clemens. Like, his 1980s run with Boston into the early 90s, he was untouchable. He was the best right-handed pitcher in the American League. Maybe Dave Stewart makes a run at that. There's some other guys there who had some really good years for, like, Oakland. But nobody could touch Clemens if he was really rolling. In his Boston years, he was awesome. His New York years are different, but his Boston years were awesome.
In 86, he won the MVP.
Yeah. Which pitchers don't do.
And they should have won the World Series.
Should have won the World Series.
So he's a Cy Young MVP. The next year he won the Cy Young again. I think he had 3 Cy Youngs in Boston. But then he still won like 3 or 4 more. I think he won 4 more.
Yeah.
Right? Because the 2 in Toronto, 1 in New York, 1 in Houston. Yeah. So he, I will associate him a lot with those Yankee teams. Just because he seemed like the hired gun, it personified the Yankee kind of like the Yankees that we grew up with, right?
Yep.
Buying everyone in the late 90s, 2000s. Not that they didn't have a ton of great guys they drafted, right? But they went out and got a lot of guys too. So I kind of think of him that way, but I just think it's kind of ironic here. Like, so this is a set of 92 baseball cards, which means he's been in the league for 8 years, and we're already talking about his career highlights.
Right. I mean, and I don't know if that's because, like, you know, maybe it's starting to turn right here. I don't know, but like, yeah, I mean, 8 years because they already knew. At 8 years, he was a Hall of Fame. He was the best pitcher we'd ever seen. I mean, he was in our generation. Like our generation, is he the best pitcher in our generation? And maybe they knew it after 8 years. Like he was freaking Cy Young. He was Walter Johnson. He was Bob Gibson after 8 years.
I think it depends on how you're classifying best. Like, are you looking for most dominating? Are you looking for his longevity? You know, I mean, his longevity plays a big piece into this, right? 'Cause
Sure.
he was dominant in several different decades.
Right.
Right? He won six Cy Youngs over 3 different decades. And he won multiple in each, like, which is crazy.
He's
You
on
know,
the short
if
list,
I-
though. He's on the short list of our generation of pitchers. Like, if we could say, okay, name 5 guys. Clemens is on everybody's 5. Same with, like, Randy Johnson. And, you know, maybe Tom Glavine or Greg Maddux, you know.
See, and if I had to pick one game, I'd probably pick Pedro.
And Pedro.
But he definitely did not have the longevity that those other guys you mentioned did.
That's right.
Right? He was great, but he was great for a shorter period of time.
Yeah, it's kind of like for right-handed pitchers, you know, it's Clemens, Pedro, Maddux, maybe Halladay, maybe of the last 30 years, right? Those are probably the best. I mean, now Verlander, Scherzer, sure, yeah, those guys get in there, but I think those 4 guys are like the guys from like the last 30 years. If you're looking for right-handed pitching, like a right-handed guy that can get people out, those are the 4 guys. And Maddux was just different than those other 3 guys. Maddux is the artist versus these guys who are more the machines.
I do like on the backside here how it talks about how he threw a 90+ mile an hour fastball.
Ooh. I mean, Tyler
Yeah,
Duffy
but-
does that.
Everybody does now, right?
Yep. You can't get in the big leagues without one now.
Unless you're Sergio Romo.
Or unless you're Willens Astudillo or you're Yadier Molina and you just need to go in for mop-up role. Then you can throw your little 60-mile-an-hour eephus and you'll get 10 innings a year. Garbage.
All right, I think we should we got to touch on Sandberg before we wrap this up.
All right, let's do that. Let's talk Sandberg. Do you find him overrated? Are you a Sandberg guy? Are you a big Sandberg guy? Because I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence.
I liked him.
Yeah.
Part of that though is growing up with WGN.
Yes.
Right? Like we could sit at home during the summer and get WGN and get Cubs games. Right? You could get some Braves games on TBS too, but you got a lot, right? Because the Cubs still have a limit on how many day games they can play every year.
Yep.
So they were on all the time, right? And
all
so
the time.
I think that. So I personally liked him because I watched, a lot of him, and I played a little bit of second base when I was younger, and so I was a fan of his.
Right.
Now, I think the interesting thing is his retirement. Right, when he basically walked away in 95, right?
Right.
Actually walked away in the middle of June it was the middle of 94.
Yeah.
And he didn't play in 95.
Yeah, he waited. He got through all the strike stuff and then came back and played a couple more
and then
years.
he came back. Yep. And still was okay. He hit like 285 when he came back and he I think he had the most home runs for a second baseman for a while.
Yeah, I think that's
I'm sure
true.
that's not anymore, right? Like Jeff Kent had to have passed him.
I think Kent did, or Brett Boone or something. No, not Brett Boone. He only had like 2 good years, but
I think his retirement probably played part of the deal, like into some of his legend.
right.
right? Because we didn't. I mean, he came back for 2 more years, but we still never got that like him. Like those down years at the end, right? We just never saw that with him.
Yeah.
He only played for a handful.
He doesn't have the Robbie Alomar sink, right? Where like the last 6 years of Robbie Alomar's career are terrible, and Jeff Kent even kind of fizzled out at the end of his career, and Sandberg doesn't have that. You're right. He doesn't kind of have that off a cliff moment, right? That drop off moment where it just goes away. The Cubs thing is interesting because I really feel like that the roster they had in the late 80s, early 90s, I don't know how they don't win a World Series. I know they got to the NLCS where they lost to the Giants, but when you have, Greg Maddux and Sutcliffe at the top of your rotation, and you have a young Rafi Palmeiro and Mark Grace and Sean Dunston and Ryan Sandberg, and you've got some of the pieces that they had, I don't know how they don't. I just don't know how they don't win more. Like, I don't know how that team didn't win more games. That was such a good team.
But I think part of that is like we're remembering that and elevating some of those guys because they were so available to us back then.
True. Like
you know what I mean? Like
young Jamie Moyer who didn't learn how to pitch yet. Moyer couldn't get anybody out in the 80s, but Moyer was on that team. I mean? Yeah.
I do think that is a legitimate thing that like we grew up without getting games like we do now, right?
Right.
And so some of these guys that we see are elevated in our minds, even though, right? I mean, like Sean Dunston, nice player, 2-time All-Star.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, he's not an amazing player, but would you take him over Greg Gagne?
Probably not.
See, the shortstop didn't have to be great back then. Like they're like, I mean, but I think Walt Weiss wasn't that good. They won World Series with him.
Gagne was pretty good, and defensively,
yeah,
Gagne was pretty good, and he was healthy.
He was healthy
because Dunston ran into a lot of that stuff.
That's true
in his career. So. No, and that maybe that's a conversation for another time. But like, how much those WGN and TBS created fans, right? Created Cubs fans, created Braves fans, and then those guys kind of live in some of the lore now that maybe is a little beyond what they were.
I think that's fair. I mean that is fair to say that because there is something mythic. About kind of that's the youth part of this, right? Is that they're these players that we watched all the time, not just the Twins guys, but you're right, the Cubs guys, the Braves guys, and whoever was on the national Saturday game, which usually ended up being a big time. They tried to get a big time matchup or a big time pitcher or something. So you saw Clemens enough. Like I feel like you didn't see him a lot during the year. You probably saw him 6 times a year back then before you had cable. But you saw him the 6 times, and he was awesome the 6 times you saw him every year. So it made him even bigger, made him even kind of larger. I don't know. That was fun. I love opening cards. This was great. This was a good one. And we're going to open up other stuff too, right? Like we're going to open basketball and football and hockey. If you find an old WWF wrestling card pack, we're opening that one too. Talk about Coco Beware here. I've got a
huge stack downstairs of just a variety of stuff. So we'll kind of make our way through and some old too, some new.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've got some current stuff. We'll kind of bounce around each week and find something fun to talk about.
That's what we're going to do. And then we got the football pod coming really soon. We've got preview stuff coming up. Probably even do a little, probably got to do a little fantasy football talk as well. Zach's on a mission to get some big changes happening in our fantasy league. All that stuff's going to be on the agenda here over the next month. And again, we're going to be, putting different podcasts and different video pieces up on the channel. And that's why we want you to subscribe to it on YouTube and tell everybody about it. And then, of course, obviously continue to listen to the podcast that is on our Podbean feed and our Spotify feed and our other stuff like that. So that would be great. And so we appreciate you tuning into us this time around, and we'll be back again really, really soon. Zach, this was fun. I like these little shorties. This is great. This is exactly what we want to do. Love it. Good chatting with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And everybody else, have a great 4th of July. Keep your head up. We'll see you next time.